In this video for Computer Science 9618, we're going to do another example of aggregation and containment using cards and a deck of cards. So we're going to program it out using aggregation, then we'll update our code and make it containment. That way, if Cambridge asks us to use aggregation or containment, we'll be ready for all scenarios that they could give us. So let's go ahead and let's get started. So we're going to do public class. You want to start with a class. Public class card. Now we can do private. All our attributes are private, and that's going to be value as string, and that's going to be the card value. Is it a 2, 3, 4, all the way to 10, jack, queen, king, or ace? So that's why we have to do it as a string. And then the suit is going to be a string as well. A card has both a value and a suit. So let's create our constructor. Our constructor is always going to be public sub new in VB. And I'm going to accept two parameters. The first one is going to be the value. The second one is going to be S for the suit. So that's going to be assigned as soon as we create the card. So all I'm going to do, value equal to the parameter V, and then suit equal to the parameter S. We're going to need two get methods because we're going to want to print those cards out in submain. So we got to be able to get the rank in the suit. Because they're private, we can access those using get methods. We can't access these directly because they are private, and that's why we have get methods. So get value, no parameters. The return data type is a string, and simply I'm returning value because my get methods get value. Now we'll do one for suit. So public function, get suit, no parameters as string, and we return the suit. Just like that, our class, our card class is done. Now what we need to do is we need to do one for the deck class. Public class deck. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an array of 5 cards. Now, the first example we're going to do is going to be aggregation. Then we'll do it using containment. So here we have public class deck. I'm going to do private cards and do 5 of them. And I'm going to do that as the card data type. Because remember, my data type of my card has value and value and suit. Both of those are strings, so I want to do that using a card. Now, on the Cambridge exam, I have not seen it in quite a while. Cambridge may ask you to create what's called a default constructor. Our deck object is not going to have any parameters. So it's not actually it's going to use the constructor because we're doing object-oriented programming, but there's not going to be any code executed that we write. Let me show you what I mean. This is a default constructor. Public sub new, no parameters, in sub. That's it. That is a default constructor. When we create a deck object, it will invoke this constructor. We're just not assigning any values when the deck is created to the attributes because these are going to exist independently of the deck for our aggregation example. Now, we're going to create a method called public sub add card. Now, this is going to take a couple parameters and just a little bit, but this is where we're actually going to add the cards to our attribute of the deck. That's an array, so we're going to create an array of cards. Down here in submain, we're going to use some randomization statements so we can look at how to use that and incorporate that into object-oriented programming and start building up our 5 random cards, and then we'll add them to our deck. All right, down here in submain, I'm going to do R&D num as new random. That is so we can randomly select a value for the card, but we also need to select a random suit. And because it's generating a random number, I'll do num as integer. Now, I'm going to do tsuit as string, and that stands for temporary suit. I can also do tvalue as a string because that's going to be a temporary value 2 through 10 for the numeric cards. And then if it's the random number is 11, that's going to be our jack. A queen is going to be 12, king 13, and ace 14. So if we generate one of those random numbers, we're going to that's how we're going to get the value for each card. Now, you may be saying, well, our value is a string. If we're generating a random number, how are we going to make that a string? We're simply going to convert it to a string using a built-in string method. So that will take care of that. All right, let's go ahead and let's generate some random numbers. So I'm going to do num equals R&D num dot next. I want to generate a number between 2, because I don't need to generate number 1 and 15. Remember, that second number is exclusive. Then I'm going to do select case num. And if the case is 2 to 10, then all I'm going to do is I'm going to assign that temporary value to num, but I need to convert it to a string. I do that with .toString. That will take care of all the values 2 to 10. Then I'm going to do case 11. Then my t value is going to be equal to a jack. And then I'm going to do the same thing for a queen, but this time case 12. Then I'm going to do the king. And then for the last one, an ace. Now, if you really want to, you can do the ace as case 1 if you want to. It doesn't matter as long as it is random. There we go. Now, we need to do another randomization statement, and we want to overwrite what we've already used. If you create 2 new random objects up here, like I did R&D num as new random. If you create a second one, more likely than not, they're going to generate the same number, and you don't want that to happen. So we've already used our random number here to get the value. So now we're going to overwrite it and use it again, but this time for the suit. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to do num equals R&D num dot next 1 to 5. And then I'm going to do select case num again. And this time, what I'm going to be doing is, instead of t value, I'm going to be doing t suit. So case 1, I'm going to say my temporary suit is equal to, we'll say hearts. For case 2, my t suit is equal, we'll say spades. Case 3, and these can be in any order, we'll say diamonds. And then in case 4, we'll say, let me scroll down here a little bit. We'll say our T suit is clubs. All right, so I have everything I need. Now, what we're going to do is, after we exit this statement, we have our temporary value, we have our temporary suit. We want to pass that to our card constructor. But before we do that, I need to create an array of card objects that I can then pass to my add card method in my deck class. So what I'm going to do, well, the first thing I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and create this deck. So I'm going to do this as new deck, doesn't accept any parameters, using that default constructor. And remember, VB will put in a default constructor for you, only a default. It won't do one that accepts parameters. This is my default constructor. How do I know it's being used? Because it does say one reference, and that is in this line right down here that we just wrote. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do dim cards. I want 5 of them as card. Now, when I do this, if I do new card, it's not going to work. You're going to say that it's going to say it can't do that. Couple of reasons. One, our constructor accepts parameters. We cannot pass all the parameters at once and cannot create 5 cards at one time. But we are going to use a for loop. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this in a for loop. So we're going to do for I equals 1 to 5. Because I'm going to start with index 1. You can start with index 0. And if you do, your I is going to be 0 to 4. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here right after this in select statement, and I'm going to create a new card. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do cards I equals new card. So in index 1, I'm creating a new card. I need to pass two values. I think I did value and then suit. Yes, I did. Make sure the order of parameters does matter. When we're passing values to these parameters, the order does matter. The computer doesn't know which one's a value and a suit. It's simply going to accept those parameter values and assign it to whatever we say. So I did value, so I'm going to pass t value, and I'm going to pass t suit. Just like that, I'm creating all the cards. And here, I'm going to do next. I don't think I have next up there yet. I don't. So that will create 5 cards. Now what we need to do is we need to adjust this add card, because after we create the 5 cards and they've been created, we're going to pass them to the add card method. That way we can add them to our deck. So we're going to accept 2 parameters for our add card. The first one is going to be, and I'm going to call it index, and that's going to hold the value or accept the value of I down here in of our for loop, because we need to assign it to the index of our cards, which are part of the deck. The next thing we need to do is we need to pass the card object. So I'm going to do T card for temporary card as card. That is the data type. Now, because the cards have already been created, I'm not going to call the constructor inside this add card. This example that we're doing here is aggregation. The cards are created outside of the deck class, and because they're not being created or because they're being created independently, they can survive and exist without the deck. That is aggregation. The cards are not contained inside of the deck. And when I say contained, I mean the card objects themselves. They're not being created inside the deck class. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to do cards index. That is accessing the index here. And we're going to pass up I. And all we're going to do is we're going to put in the card object, T card. And it will be able to accept it because each index in my deck class for cards is of the card data type. So that's why I can load my temporary card right into that card index. So what we're going to do is we need to go down here. After we create our card method, or excuse me, our card object, all we need to do is pass it to the add card method. Now you can do this inside or outside the for loop. You can create a second for loop to do it, or you can do it right after we create the card. I'm going to do mine right after we create the card. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to do this deck dot add card, and it has to accept 2 values, I, which is going to be the index, and then cards I, the new card that we just created. All we need to do now is we need to print the details of the card, and we're going to use that get value and get suit, but we're going to do that down here inside of our get details, because what we're going to do is we're going to print each card that is inside the deck. So let's take a look at how to do that. All right, so we're going to do public sub print deck, and all we're going to do is we're going to iterate through the deck, which consists of 5 cards. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to do console.write, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to print the value. So I'm going to say card 1. I'm going to print the value, then I'll use a write line and print the suit. That way it appears all on one line and then kicks the cursor to the next line. So I'm actually not going to do card 1. I'm going to do, let's see here. We're going to do card ampersand I. We're going to put a colon. We're going to put a space. And then what we're going to do is we're going to get the value of the card. But how do I get the value of the card? Well, that's going to be cards I dot get value. Now, we need to put this inside of a for loop. That would have been better to do at the beginning. but that's okay. Nothing we can't fix. There we go. And we'll put this back to I. That way it says card 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I was getting ahead of myself. Then console.writeLine. And then it'll say card 1. And then we'll get the value. And then what we also need to get is we're going to put a space. And we'll say of. So like a 7 of. And then we're going to do cards I. Dot get suit. There we go. All we need to do now is call our print deck method. So we're going to go back into submain. We're not going to call it every single time. We're going to do it after we create all the cards and add them. Then all I'm going to do is this deck.print deck. That will call that method and it will print out 5 cards. So let's go ahead. Let's run this. Let's test our code. And this will be the aggregation example. Then we'll take a look at containment and how it works different than aggregation, but it will still print out the deck. We're just going to create those cards a little differently. So here we go, and we can see we have the 9 of hearts, 9 of spades, 4 of clubs, 4 of hearts, 2 of hearts. Let's run that again. Make sure we get different cards. Should be random every time. Queen of spades, 6 of diamonds, 10 of spades, 10 of diamonds, Queen of diamonds. So we are getting different cards. So that's great. Let's run it just one more time. Can never test enough. And here, 4 of hearts, 3 of diamonds, 3 of hearts, Jack of spades, Ace of diamonds. So we're getting everything we're supposed to. Our code, with it is the way it is right now, is all aggregation. Let's update our code, adjust it just a little bit so we can take a look at how containment works. Okay, the first thing we're going to do to change this from aggregation to containment is we need to create the card inside of the deck class, and that is what makes it containment. So we're going to adjust this add card method. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste it, and then I'll comment this out. That way we can see the difference and you don't have to keep rewinding. So we're going to get rid of this line right here. All we're going to do is adjust it. Now, I need the index still because I'm going to do it inside of a for loop. But what I also need to do is not pass the card object because I'm actually creating it inside the add card method. So because it hasn't been created, I can't pass the card. But what I can do is I can do the value, which is going to be a string, and I can do the suit. So I'm going to do by val value as string, by val suit as string. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, and it's not by val, by val, which means by value. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take value and suit. I'm going to pass it to the constructor of the card class. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do cards index equals new card, but it has to accept 2 values, and that's going to be the value and the suit that I pass up. That will actually create the card. I need to make sure index is passed up because I want to make sure I'm putting it in the right index of my cards array, which belongs to my deck. So that is how we update the add card method. We're taking 3 parameters. We're still taking index like we did originally, keep track of where we are inside the array. But this time I can't pass the card object because it hasn't been created, because I'm creating the card right here on this line, passing value and suit. So let's go down, and I can leave this here. The print deck will work just like it's supposed to. I scroll down here. All I'm going to do this time is I'm not going to create the cards here. So I'm going to go ahead and comment this out so you can still see it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this deck.addCard. I'm going to pass the value of I. I'm going to pass my temporary value and my temporary suit. And now that red line is gone. And this makes the code change from aggregation to containment. Because the only way these cards can exist, these card objects can exist, is inside of the deck class. Because it is a method inside the deck class where they are being created. If I destroy the deck, I don't have access to add cards. So we still have print deck, which will work the same way. All we're going to do now is we're going to run our code, and we're going to see another getting 5 cards again. And you can see here, Queen of Hearts, 10 of Diamonds, Jack of Hearts, 3 of Hearts, 9 of Hearts. And this is using containment. It serves the same purpose. We're still able to get 5 randomized cards. Now, there could be repeats. If we didn't want repeats, we could do an array list. That's usually outside the bounds of the Cambridge curriculum, which is why I did not do that. But you can use a list or an array list if you would like. But here you can see Queen of Clubs, 6 of Diamonds, 2 of Clubs, 6 of Spades, Ace of Hearts. That is with using containment. Hope you guys found this video helpful on aggregation and containment. If you did find it helpful, please take a moment to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to help the channel grow. And we'll see you guys in the next programming video.